Hello, my name's Andrew Hugill, and this is an introduction to the balance disorder spectrum. The balance disorder spectrum is an attempt to represent the full range of balance disorders in one interactive graphic that provides essential information and reveals the relationships between the many disorders. Balance disorders are very common. 1 in 3 people in the UK under the age of 65 will experience a balance disorder sometime in their lifetime. Over 70, feeling dizzy is the commonest reason to visit a doctor. But balance disorders generally are poorly understood. There are many examples of misdiagnosis and poor support for these conditions. The language used to describe them is often vague and unclear, and both clinicians and their patients often find themselves struggling to identify their particular disorder. I developed the spectrum with Peter Ray, who is president of the Royal Society of Medicine Otology section in the UK. I'm a professor at the University of Leicester. Balance disorders are not my professional research field. I'm simply a person with lived experience of a balance disorder called Meniere's disease. So I'm what you might call an expert by experience. The spectrum was created in 2018, and it will be of interest to anyone who experiences or just wants to know about balance disorders. While it is not a diagnostic tool, it does provide reliable information on many of the balance disorders that we understand best. There are many overlaps and subtle differences between these conditions. We have not included every single condition, and there are some that don't have names yet. The spectrum is under constant revision as our knowledge of these conditions increases. So we have presented reliable information as completely as we can at this time. In a little while, I will demonstrate how to use the spectrum and how it all hangs together. I conceived of this as a spectrum partly because of my understanding of the autism spectrum. I'm autistic myself, and I recognise that there is a huge variety of experience and characteristics that fall under that label. The same is true as balance disorders, but this information has never before been gathered in one place and presented in this way. This has the potential to provide new insights. It also tries to offer some comfort to people with balance disorders as they're enabled to see how their conditions relate to others. Finally, it hopes to have a transformative effect on the provision of healthcare. Balance disorders are widely perceived by professionals as not very glamorous, but the sheer quantity and variety that the spectrum reveals should at least indicate the need for a more sustained and well-resourced effort in this direction. So let's take a look at the spectrum in action. Okay, so this is the balance disorder spectrum. You get here by visiting balancedisorderspectrum.info. As you can see, the 3 colours used designate 3 different balance symptoms. The word vertigo is often misused. It refers to a hallucination of movement. In other words, you perceive the world to be moving around you. This is often rotational and is accompanied typically by nausea and vomiting. Disequilibrium is the sensation of being off balance. So the world appears stable, but you feel off balance. And often this will be accompanied by a fall in one direction or another. Lightheadedness, the medical term for this is pre-syncope. In other words, the feeling you get just before you faint. The spectrum indicates how common the various conditions are by their positioning on the diagram. So the further out you go, the more common the condition, with the most common being about 1 person in 100. And then the central ring divides up the balance disorders into those that are a consequence of problems in the inner ear, those that arise from the central nervous system, those are the result of cardiovascular issues, and an array of other problems. The central white area contains informative text about each of these conditions. Let's look at a few in more detail. I'm not going to go through every single one, you can do that for yourself, but I just show you the principle. First I'll select the one that affects me, that's Meniere's disease up here. And we see the central area changes and we get information about Meniere's disease. So we learn that it's uncommon, let's say 1 in 1,000 people experience it, and that it has various symptoms: severe vertigo with nausea, aural fullness, that's a sensation of fullness in the ear, hearing loss, tinnitus, brain fog, which usually happens after an episode. It may affect one ear or both ears, so unilateral or bilateral to varying degrees. Not all symptoms may be present early in the disease process. And then we have something about the cause. Inner ear fluid imbalance is the cause of Meniere's disease. This is endolymphatic hydrops, but we don't know what causes that. So the underlying cause is probably multifactorial. And then the duration, well, attacks last 20 minutes to 12 hours. And clusters of attacks may recur over years or decades or burn out. So that is an inner ear disorder. Let's have a look at a couple of the others. Let's look at PPPD, or persistent postural perceptual dizziness. This is an example of disequilibrium. And here we learn that it's pretty common, that's 1 in 100. Persistent sensations of rocking or swaying unsteadiness and or dizziness without vertigo. And the cause is usually some kind of triggering event, like an episode of vertigo or associated anxiety. And the typical duration is 3 months or more. And now let's have a look at an example of lightheadedness. Let's go for vitamin D deficiency. This is common, again, about 1 in 100. The additional symptoms: fatigue, aches and pains. The cause is lack of exposure to sunlight, and it lasts until treated. And usually with vitamin D deficiency, this can be easily treated with vitamin D supplements. You'll notice here as well symptoms like anxiety. This is actually present in quite a lot of these conditions. It is noted separately in all of those, but treated on its own, it causes lightheadedness and short-lasting panic attacks with hyperventilation, or chronic imbalance with headache, fear of falling, claustrophobia and malaise. May be the result of dizziness or a cause of dizziness, and the duration is very, very variable. So that's a quick introduction to this balance disorder spectrum. I hope that's useful, and please spend some time exploring it.